Serious, what's the scariest or saddest thing you ever dealt with or saw at school? An old school friend found his mother dead due to a heart attack in his bathroom. From one moment to another he was like a whole different person. He became very emotional. Dropped out of school a few years later. Began doing drugs. Even went to jail. Hope he is doing better today. In college a student went missing for months until he was found by a custodian. Turns out he was alone drunk and stumbled into an electrical room. He electrocuted himself to death. Kelsey Smith. She was a year ahead of me in high school. I didn't know her very well but had a couple classes with her and chatted maybe a handful of times. She was one of those people that pretty much everyone knew. Then one morning shortly after the end of the year my dad told me that some girl from school had gone missing. I did what any teenager in 2007 would have done and jumped on Facebook. And found a whole deluge of posts from my friends asking for any information about Kelsey. Then I remember I was in the airport with a bunch of school friends getting ready to go on a class trip to Germany when we saw on the news in the terminal that a body had been found. Scariest was a routine hallway fight that went sideways. It was between two girls. Out of nowhere one of them pulls out a box cutter in the middle of the fight and gets a clean strike right across the other girl's face. The saddest was probably my neighbor. When she was in 5th grade. Early middle school. She was trying to save up money for something. I don't remember what. Her parents were huge stoners. Had enormous weed plants growing in their backyard. I could see them clear as day. One day she brought a gallon-sized bag full of weed to school and was planning on selling it to one of the older kids. The school found out and called the police. I remember coming home and watching them raid their house taking out plant after plant. Both the girls ended up in foster care for a long while after that. There was a pair of twins in my high school. One of the twins died from some disease. Don't remember what. Few months after that the other twin committed suicide. A lad in the year above me who I went to primary and secondary school with, not a friend but I knew him. One pay lesson he just dropped dead, undiagnosed heart condition. He had been a pretty athletic guy as well. I think he did cross-country running. A talkative kid, who I later learned was considered weird, one day came up to me outside the gym. During physical education class. He and I had never spoken before. As we waited for the gym doors to open, he pointed to the wall and said, "Imagine if someone was thrown super hard against that surface. They would stick, bleed and then slide down and die." I was taken aback, but was told that he often said this sort of thing that weekend. And sorry to continue with a sad theme. Yeah. He hanged himself in his backyard. This was a long time back. I didn't know how to react then and I still don't. Weird looking kid in high school bullied by some. Death due to cancer announced on intercom. No one had a clue. Saddest my junior year of high school. One of the students in my math class got shot and killed in a drive-by. Apparently, her ex-boyfriend was aiming at her new boyfriend and shot her instead. We didn't do anything in class for a whole week because everyone, even more so our teacher, was just really sad. Scariest about 10 students from a rival high school close to ours. Dressed in our school uniforms and trespassed on our campus during lunch and assaulted a group of our students that they had beef with. The administrators couldn't even stop them as this was more than just some spat or fight, so our students were getting beaten to a pulp. Eventually the cops came and arrested the other students and sent most of ours to the hospital. I remember seeing one of our administrators thrown into the air when he tried to get in between two of the guys. Saddest thing. In high school. A girl came to school and got stomach sick during class and literally shit herself and had it come out the back of her pants. You just don't ever have people not think of that about you for the rest of your life. She was a nice girl and it was sad because she never had hardly any friends after that and eventually transferred to another school. There was a severely disabled kid who had several physical and mental disabilities such as extra fingers and confined to a stroller. He had the mental capacity of an infant. Unable to make speech but incoherent noises. That kid always had a smile on and was gleeful, and no one said anything bad about him. They'd read to him or greet him as his liaison would push him about. One day I saw an ambulance leaving. His liaison was crying and running to her car. He had gone into cardiac arrest and died upon arrival to the hospital. He was only 9. I was in special ed at the time, and the hardest news to break to the more severe kids was our friend had passed away. The staff breaking the news to the kids. Sadly, the school didn't do a day of mourning for him because the principal was tired of kids using them as excuses to skip class and FCK around. I still can hear my friend smiling, making his loud queuing noise. School shooting. I wasn't in the cafeteria when it happened, but hearing the screams was probably the worst part. 5 kids died that day. My school literally had a holding cell for the special needs kids because they didn't want to bother with them. This was like in 1st grade, but I went to school in a middle to lower place in Mexico. There was one kid who I forgot his name, but his family was severely broke. We were friends, and one day he told me that he had been saving 20 pesos so that he could buy some of the nice school food they sold. First, I have to say that in Mexico they don't give you free lunch, you have to pay for it or bring your own. He actually brought a cheese quesadilla and if he was lucky a piece of avocado. Anyways, he walked up to the stand and he said 1 plate of, insert Mexican plate here, I forgot which one. Large. Which was 20 pesos, but then the lady said that they had highered the price to 22 pesos. Seeing him walk away and ask for 2 pesos for the entirety of the recess pains me inside now that I look back. The 2 that I remember in high school. Saddest. A kid passed away from a rare heart disease. He was the school's best runner. Scariest. At most maybe a week after the Columbine school shootings. These F-King kids set off fireworks in our one hallway. When my 12-year-old fellow classmate passed away and they couldn't explain why, so they told us it was an accidental suicide. I understood what suicide meant. But the very nature of it meant there was intention behind it. Calling it accidental just confused the grief I was already experiencing. I'd already lost my grandparents within memory. I understood death. But having to go to class every day after for the rest of the year. Where his desk used to be. Where he used to be. Leaving class afterwards. Late because I was a slow mover. And him not being there anymore were hard. During roll call in high school. When someone wasn't there. And other kids would snicker and say oh they died was brutal. Because one day in the middle of the week there was an empty chair. And the boy that sat in it never came back. Not the usual. I was at the bottom of 2 flights of stairs in a large open hallway. So the stairs were an open style. Anyway. This kid. From the top. Did the thing where he slid down the hand railing on his stomach. Flipped over the railing on accident. Fell 2 stories. Landed feet away from me. Sickening thud. He broke ribs. A leg. Many teeth. Partially collapsed lung. Concussion. He was back in school relatively quickly. I had my back to it. So I didn't see the landing. I think it was straight on his back. At lunchtime when I was 11. I saw a 14-year-old boy fall and hit his forehead on the edge of a bench. He died shortly after. This happened in 2006 and I can still remember it clear as day. I doubt I will ever forget the hair injury I saw. Or the teachers rushing to perform CPR. Teacher here, both are 7th grade. The scariest wasn't really scary but was more of a WTH type of thing. Kid got mad because the teacher wouldn't up his grade from failing to an A or B. Opened up the window, 2nd story. This was one of the few rooms without bars on the window, and, while maniacally laughing, threw books out of it. Kept laughing. Went to walk out of the room and pulled the door shut so hard that the glass in the door shattered. Walked down the hall laughing. The scariest non-WTH thing. Student waited for a teacher and jumped her outside of the building after school one day. She didn't come back. Saddest. One of my brightest and happiest students was dealing with some family issues. Found out in the morning before school that his cousin had stabbed his aunt to death 48 times or something ridiculous like that, and still had to come to school because his parents couldn't miss work and his aunt was basically his other mom. I remember him sitting in the cafeteria and absolutely bawling over it. Small town. Football is king. One of my friends was sexually assaulted on campus. I was a witness to the exit of her attacker. She waited in a chair while blood pooled beneath her and police questioned her. Wearing sweatpants I gave her because her clothes were ruined evidence. They kept her for over an hour questioning her before I got a call out to her parents. A hospital trip later. She's had to have serious surgery to stop internal bleeding. She was a minor. He was legal of age, QB star of the team. Open and shut case, right? Witnesses evidence. Grand jury refused to indict for statutory rape. She ended up leaving town. Bullied and her name dragged through the mud. I tried to be there for her. Especially since I was the one who found her. Her face that day has never left my memory. Nor the blood puddling beneath her seat. This was before cell phones, or I'd have called her family sooner. I testified for her. And while I know I did everything I could at that age, 13, I still wished I could have done more. Saddest thing I've seen, well more heard, was a girl in middle school commit suicide. Have it announced over the speakers one morning. Then everyone proceeded to not give a hoot. I'm shocked now that the staff didn't bat an eye when this happened. During a lesson a kid was fooling around and ended up getting a CRT TV dropped on his head. We didn't see him for a few weeks after that. He would come back for a day or two then be sick. He died of a brain bleed in his sleep. That's the reason he was feeling sick. It would have been picked up quicker, but his family were Jehovah's Witnesses and didn't take him to a hospital, just a GP. Scariest was my friend getting his head cut quite badly and needing an ambulance. Saddest was a girl died. It didn't particularly sadden me as I was not a fan of hers, but a few of our mutual friends were down for a few months. One thing that did annoy me was everyone hated on the truck driver that hit her. Well, she pulled out without looking onto a highway and got clipped. The guy was like 25 with a daughter and his life was turned upside down, I am sure. There was this girl who tried to overdose herself. Me and my friends came back from the jumbo and we saw her being rushed towards an ambulance on a stretcher. Edit. Non-stop bullying since kindergarten till high school. I was actually glad when we had to stay at home due to coronavirus and my grades improved drastically during online school. People don't realize how that FCKs you up. I'm middle-aged now and still carry some personality traits formed from dealing with bullying. Even though I'm doing somewhat decent in life otherwise. I was a substitute teacher and a kid had committed suicide the night before. Scariest. One teacher turned out to be a pedophile. He didn't do anything to anyone from my class because we were 11. And apparently he preferred 13-14-year-old girls. High school principal took inappropriate pictures of his female students without their knowledge. So if I encountered two that got caught. Just how many are there in schools out there? A girl in my school completed suicide and planned everything meticulously. From the method to her goodbye letters to the exact specifics of her funeral. She overdosed laying in bed next to her younger brother, who woke up when she was dying and couldn't be saved by her father, a GP, anymore. So very sad. That she chose doing this next to her brother still FCKs me up. Someone I saw every day. Getting transported to the psychiatric clinic. Then get dragged out of a river with the note "I'm sorry" in his left boot. He drowned himself. In a gloomy realistic kind of way. The pay teacher being a pedophile. School administration knew and repeatedly backed him up. Pay teacher has a habit of barging in unannounced in the girls' locker room. While climbing the rock climbing wall. Teacher would grab girls' butts to help them even when they vocally told him to please stop. He would put his hands all over girls in gym to help with their form. He never did any of that to the guys. The principal and other admin knew all about it. It was routine to hear about a girl's parents making a stink. Threatening to sue. etc. But the school always backed up the teacher. He retired peacefully after a lifetime of perving on girls as young as 12 and is currently receiving a full pension. They didn't handle 9/11 very well at my school. All the teachers panicked. Luckily my mom raced to the school to pick me up. It was a chaotic day, so I don't blame them. But some of them just said FCK the kids and didn't give us instructions. Glad my mom predicted this. Some kid tried stabbing me in the neck with scissors, but I somehow stopped him. That same kid then actually stabbed someone else. That was pretty scary. For the sad part, there's just too much sad to recount. We found out when I was in year 11, 15-16, that a year 8 boy, 12-13, had committed suicide by jumping in front of a train. We found out via a whole school assembly, which is incredibly rare. We all were offered someone to talk to if we needed. Those close to him were allowed the week off to process. Another incident was a boy in my year at the time decided to pull a knife on me and a few of my friends in the changing rooms after PE. Nothing came of it. A 6'7" teacher who played rugby and was very strong managed to talk him down. He was arrested. Another boy tried to hang himself with a tie. Didn't work and the tie snapped. But still, he got help and I assume is okay. Haven't been in school for a year now. I finished in COVID times last year. Got my exam results without taking them. Saddest. A star soccer player who was really popular in my school lost her leg at a team car wash. One of her teammates was in the car to move it. Accidentally hit the gas and pinned her against the wall. After a couple days in a medical coma, they had to amputate one leg above the knee. She had a soccer scholarship to college. But luckily enough the university wasn't evil and let her keep it. Her friend was FK'd up for years though. Scariest was the lockers full of brown recluse spiders. I was sent to a troubled teen boarding school at 15 years old. While there I was one of a few people to walk in and find another student had hung herself. An image I'll never forget and will deal with every day of my life. Saddest? Sally Rye falling to the ground. And the tears of Mr. Griffiths as he tried unsuccessfully to rescue it at her. He later learned that it was a brain aneurysm. She died in front all of us. Her classmates. Aged 13. Scariest? There was an actual fire. And not just a drill. Saddest. Girl committed suicide. She was one of the most popular girls in school. Goalie for both the girls and boys soccer team. Receiver for the boys football team. Track. Band. And other extracurriculars. I just moved back to my hometown and what would have been her niece looks exactly like her. I did a double take when I first moved back to my hometown. Scene. 34-year-old guy looking open-mouthed at a teenage girl at a McDonald's. Me. Sorry. You look exactly like someone I went to high school with. Huh? Was it Jane Doe? Me. Yes. Huh? She is my aunt. Me. So you are John Doe's kid, Suicide Girl's brother? Huh? Yeah. I've heard it my entire life. My dad found a mortar grenade in the root system of a tree in the schoolyard. He went to school in Poland in the 70s. And one day in middle school the biology teacher told his class to go outside and knock down a dead tree in the schoolyard. So my dad and 15 other boys went to do so. So they knocked the tree down. And when they looked in the tree root system, there was a f***ing unexploded mortar grenade from World War II. Well, one of the kids, let's call him Chris, wasn't the smartest guy. He picked up the grenade. And as he did, my dad ran away as fast as he could as he used to read a lot of war stories so knew the dangers of a grenade. Anyways, Chris and about 10 other boys went to the principal's office on the 3rd floor of the school and put the grenade on the principal's desk. He started to get heart palpitations and didn't feel well, and told Chris to put the grenade back in the tree roots. Teacher being murdered. Girl cutting her wrist during lunch. The principal being a pedo. Shootings. Stabbing. Beatdowns outside of school. In 6th grade a kid showed me a knife and said he was going to stab someone if they made a move on him. Thing was, the kid he was going to stab was the school's fat nice kid who was just the chillest dude. I was in shock and never told anyone, so luckily nothing happened. All a few years after that there was a shooter threat, so the whole district went on lockdown. My classroom was raided by cops with rifles who yelled at us to get our hands up. We were escorted and patted down to make sure nobody had a gun. This was 2 years ago.